Munich, Germany, 1942. Agnes was being followed. A 14-year-old resistance member at the height of World War II, she had just left a secret meeting. She tried to slide along the dark street undetected, but she sensed she had been spotted by police. Curled in her hand were secret codes she had worked into a drawing of a flower. If she was caught, it would mean death. Her heart raced as she heard the pounding of a German SS officer's boots on the pavement behind her. Suddenly, she felt a knife pressed against her back. "What were you doing in there with those people?" the SS officer demanded. "And what is that paper in your hand?" By the late 1930s, Adolf Hitler was on the rise. Nazism was rapidly spreading to neighboring countries, and Europe was becoming a dangerous place for Jews and anyone who disagreed with the Nazis. Forebodings of Nazi anti-Semitism were felt even in Paderovci, Czechoslovakia, a tiny rural town where a small girl named Agnes Lackovic was growing up in poverty. Agnes was the fifth of 7 children. Her parents, Jan and Maria, were poor subsistence farmers who never had enough to feed their family. Agnes was a smart but severely malnourished and sickly child who suffered from constant serious ailments. When Agnes was 10, her well-to-do aunt living in Munich, Rosa Schneider, sent for her. Rosa was worried about Agnes's health and wanted to help her get well. In 1939, with the Nazis preparing to invade Czechoslovakia, Agnes set off alone for Munich, a tiny girl swamped in a too-big dress, with nothing but 2 slices of bread tied in a napkin for the long train ride. When Agnes arrived, Rosa was horrified. Agnes was severely underweight, as well as lice-ridden and filthy from years without a proper bath. Rosa immediately brought her to a beauty parlor to be washed and deloused, then took her to the doctor. Once they had determined that Agnes would live, it was time to begin her new life in Munich. First, Rosa nursed Agnes back to health. Next, she found a tutor so that Agnes could learn German and attend local school. One thing soon became evident: Agnes was extremely smart. Unbeknownst to Rosa's husband, Georg, a successful and well-regarded architect, Rosa had become involved with a secret resistance movement against the Nazis, whom she hated deeply. The Nazis were steadily increasing their military reach across Europe and imprisoning ever greater numbers of Jews in brutal concentration camps. Rosa was helping share information with the Allies and smuggle Jewish people, including many of her friends, out of the country to safety. Rosa saw potential that Agnes, who was obedient and clever, could be useful to her spy work. Rosa pulled Agnes out of school and hired tutors to teach her different languages, sending Agnes to live with them for 6 months at a time in Italy, England, France, and Switzerland. After just 2.5 years, Agnes could speak German, English, French, and Italian, as well as her native Slovakian. When Agnes returned to Munich in July 1942, she began translation work for Rosa by writing letters in English containing secret messages. It went so well that Rosa decided to train Agnes as a spy. Although Agnes was now 14 years old, her childhood malnourishment and height of 4 foot 8 inches meant she could pass for a child of 10. This helped her avoid suspicion and decrease the risk of being caught. Agnes began acting as a link in a chain of other messengers and secret agents, passing coded information to the Allies. She became registered as an official spy with the US government. Her first code name was 369, but since agents as young as Agnes were very rare in espionage networks, her aunt added the suffix KID. Agnes would meet other agents at churches or hotels to receive and memorize long strings of secret codes to transfer to different agents. The agents were often shocked to see how young Agnes was.
They just couldn't believe it that I was doing this type of work and that my aunt had trained me and not get caught. You know, you're out sometimes during the night, and for a child it isn't that easy. But yet I was small enough I could sneak through a lot of things and nobody found me.
Agnes was questioned by police more than once and held at knife point and gunpoint, but her small stature and seeming innocence always enabled her to avoid arrest. Her fellow agents were not always so lucky, however. Many were caught and executed on their first missions. In 1943, Aunt Rosa gave Agnes a more unconventional way to transmit her codes, the accordion. Agnes began taking accordion lessons, and soon was playing recitals throughout Munich. But her playing contained a hidden secret. Agnes would make certain facial expressions or gestures while playing certain notes to indicate a code to agents instructed to attend the recitals. In a June 1943 recital, Agnes communicated information about a planned German aerial bombing to the Allies, which enabled them to prevent the attack. Agnes now began to work more independently as a secret agent. But first, Aunt Rosa wanted her to truly understand what was at stake. Agnes knew of the Nazis' hatred for the Jews, but had not seen the horror they endured firsthand. Rosa brought Agnes to the Dachau concentration camp, where Agnes smelled the bodies burning and saw large piles of ashes.
And I was in shock because I don't think I quite understood. And she says, we have to help these people. We have to get them out. Those are my friends, and they're killing them for no reason at all. That was my initiation to the work that I started to do.
Agnes's spy work continued until 1944, when their house in Munich was bombed. Georg had to stay in town for work, but Rosa and Agnes departed for Villa Waldeck, their country house in St. Margarethen, Germany, about 75 kilometers southeast of Munich. Agnes's work now largely changed from delivering secret messages to smuggling people. Villa Waldeck had a secret underground safe room Georg had built as an air raid shelter, which, unbeknownst to him, Agnes and Aunt Rosa used to house escaping Jews, American soldiers, and other refugees and agents. The house had another very special feature. It was in the shadow of Wendelstein, a massive mountain that housed the highest observatory in Europe. From the peak, one could travel downslope to Austria and out to Switzerland and Italy. Often, after hiding people for 1 or 2 nights, Agnes would pretend to be their child, and, dressed as hikers, take them up Wendelstein via cog railway or on foot. There, they would meet another agent who would take over. The Allies had an embedded German double agent at the observatory who fed information to their underground network, including Agnes and Rosa, to coordinate their smuggling and code transmissions.
My aunt was really worried at first, because he's a German, do we trust him? Whoever she told her people that she worked with, she was worried about it. But he was really good and got caught and they killed him. We couldn't get any messages. For a week there was no message, and then my aunt got the notice that they found out that he was a double dealer and they killed him.
Agnes and Rosa would also frequently be on the lookout for Allied planes. If they saw parachutists, they would hurry into the woods or ride their bicycles around the area to find them before the Germans did, then escort them to their safe house. Agnes and Rosa even helped prisoners escape from under the very noses of their German captors. Once, a group of French prisoners of war were repairing the road in front of Villa Waldeck. While Aunt Rosa distracted the German guards with beer, cake, and cigarettes, Agnes crept over and whispered a code to the prisoners in French to let them know she was a secret agent and could help them. One prisoner was able to sneak away to Villa Waldeck's safe room. Later that night, the Germans discovered his absence and came back to search house to house for him. Luckily, the secret room and prisoner remained undiscovered.
We were lucky. Well, they didn't know that room was there. See, because the door from the basement, the door was just like it was a wall. You couldn't tell that it opens up. It was so hidden. So we did sweat a lot. But the guys that were talking with my aunt, they said right away to the other guys, you don't have to go in there because they've been here with me. They wouldn't be hiding them.
In all this time, Agnes and Rosa escaped being caught by the Nazis. Finally, on May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered. The war on the European front was over. American troops began pouring into town, taking control of the German barracks in nearby Deggendorf. Shortly after, the American officers hired Agnes, now 17 years old, as an interpreter. Impressed with her executive capability and fluency in English, they quickly put her in charge of the barracks. Agnes recruited Germans to clean, managed the officers' club and staff, negotiated to buy food, and found homes for American families. Agnes's work at the barracks eventually led her to meet Willard Deluge, a young American radio operator. 1 year later, in 1948, they were married. After being married, Agnes and Willard moved to Minnesota. They had 2 children, Margaret and Wendell, and eventually settled in Eden Prairie. In 1968, Agnes was officially adopted by Rosa, and in the early 1970s, the family briefly moved to Germany to care for Rosa in her final years. In all that time, Agnes rarely shared her story, having been banned from doing so by the US government until the Iron Curtain fell in 1989. In 1998, she and Willard wrote a book about her experiences called Rosa's Miracle Mouse, the true story of a World War II undercover teenager. Even then, she said, she kept some things secret. Agnes died in 2007, with her story largely unknown. She is a true unsung hero who showed that even a child can achieve amazing things if they are courageous and determined. In her time as a spy for the Munich Underground, she repeatedly risked her life to help save more than 200 Jews and more than 100 American, English, and French servicemen.
I'm so glad I was able to help. And I'm so proud that I was able to save so many lives. If you have a chance to help somebody, do it. Even if you're in danger, there's always somebody above us that'll help us.